heard is conjecture. I've heard people argue philosophy, what's ethical, what's not, how people supposedly react to torture, and how it supposedly makes you feel. Let me give you some facts. In the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese actively condoned torture, and America and South Vietnam did not. In fact, that's part of the reason Henry Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, that's not to say we didn't have some torture, but in general, it was one side that liked torture, one that didn't. Now, I think we can all agree that America eventually lost that war and North Vietnam won it. Part of the reason they won it is because of the North Vietnamese torture. In particular, North Vietnam and the Hanoi Hilton would torture American fighter pilots who were shot down about impending American bombing patterns. Now, the Americans in all of the Vietnam War dropped more bombs than they did in the entirety of World War II. That's a significant number of bombs. Now, they dropped, in Vietnam, the majority of these bombs on what was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which provided nearly all of the supplies for the North Vietnamese army. Now, when the US dropped these bombs, only 2% of the bombs actually hit their target. The reason for this is because the information that the North Vietnamese acquired through torture allowed them, the night before, to continually shift the location of the trail, sometimes into Cambodia, so that it could not be hit by incoming American B-52s. In contrast, the American strategy very much involved a probe and attack method, which is where soldiers would go out with absolutely no usable intel on where the enemy was, wander until they came across an enemy unit, and then fight like mad. This was an incredibly costly method, and led to higher casualty rates than in either World War I or World War II. Additionally, the American soldiers that went out there and were fighting weren't allowed to torture by the United States. In fact, in 1972, 17 American soldiers in the 101st Airborne Division were executed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas for torturing North Vietnamese soldiers. So on one hand, you have a North Vietnamese force that was able to outmaneuver and defeat its American counterpart through torture, and the American army, which was repeatedly put into instances where it did not know what it was headed into, and defeated because of improper intel, directly the result of their inability to torture POWs. I spent my time to questions.
You say you want to have torture, but is there a limit to torture for you?
For me, I wouldn't, it's hard to define. I think not generally, because if you look at what the North Vietnamese are willing to do and the effectiveness of it, North Vietnam would literally break your kneecaps and shove bamboo shoots underneath your fingernails while waterboarding you. There are confirmed reports of this amongst fighter pilots. It works.
Let's just don't speak his time.
Second. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
1 minute.
Okay, extended for 1 minute.
Are you aware that the United States did not lose the Vietnam War because the Vietnam War was never declared a war by Congress?
While technically the Vietnam conflict was by definition a police action, it was still a military defeat of the United States armies by its communist opposers.
By its communist what?
Opposers.
Is it not fair to say that the higher casualty rate could be due to the fact that the police conflict lasted for over 20 years?
By casualty rate, I don't mean the total number of people that died, because in that case, Vietnam actually had less American deaths. What I mean is the rate at which they died. More people per month on average died in Vietnam than did Europe in World War II.
Sorry, the time is over. What has to be